This is the work iceberg. I created this to describe the fact that many of us think of work as this thing that we just must do to contribute our labor to society. Society then gives us society bucks in return, and then we can spend those society bucks to obtain the things that we want and need. Think we all understand that? Think we're all pretty cool with it? Seems to work decently well. But what about this part under the surface? What about the part where working a job means giving up control of when I wake up, how I must dress, where I must be, what I must do, who I must speak to, how I must speak to them, what cultures and beliefs I must conform to, when and for how long I can take breaks, when I can stop and go home for the day. For the majority of my day, the majority of the days of the week, across the majority of my adult life. This is the dark underbelly of work that we don't really address. We just kind of take it for granted that this is how work seems to work. But that part always bothered me to my core, because doesn't that seem wrong? Are you telling me that you are cool with that? So through a sequence of events, which you can learn more about by watching this video here afterwards, I basically freed myself from work being able to control my life in this way. And now I spend my days how I want, with my growing family, plenty of time in nature, and working on / exploring the questions and problems that I find meaningful or interesting. So since then, I've been investigating how work actually works. And I'm now putting all these videos into a playlist explaining what I've found so far, and you can find that playlist here. Like this video where I explain how workplaces are actually communist dictatorships, as crazy as that sounds. It's really eye-opening. It explains why workplaces tend to suck so much. Highly recommend checking that one out. But today what I want to explore is how and why work has the power to control our lives in this way. And I think a great place to start is with a very common source of pushback when I bring this up, right? Because a lot of people would say, well, actually, Steve, you don't have to work a job. No one is forcing you to do it. Excellent proposition, my most astute compatriot. You are quite wise to point out my freedom in this regard. Let us relinquish ourselves from such monotonous and distasteful drudgery. Let us utter the utterances that we all doth dream of. I quit. Tomorrow, go ahead, tell your boss everything I've said in this video series thus far. Tell him Mr. Antonioni sent you. Actually, you know what? What I think would be better than that? Tell them this. Voila! In view, a humble vaudevillian veteran cast vicariously as both victim and villain by the vicissitudes of fate. This visage, no mere veneer of vanity, is a vestige of the vox populi, now vacant, vanished. However, this valorous visitation of a bygone vexation stands vivified, and has vowed to vanquish these venal and virulent vermin vanguarding vice and vouchsafing the violently vicious and voracious violation of volition. The only verdict is vengeance, a vendetta, held as a votive, not in vain, for the value and veracity of such shall one day vindicate the vigilant and the virtuous. Oh, we got it. Don't ask me how many takes that took. Okay, so let's say you say that to your boss, just like that. And then the boss mutters something about a psychotic breakdown as they hand us our resignation paperwork. We walk out into the world, grinning ear to ear, looking forward to having all this new time to decide what to do with. And for a bit, life is great. We can wake up whenever we want, go wherever we want, talk however we want, dress however we want. The list just goes on and on. But then one day, we run into a bit of an issue. We're at the grocery store, and the cashier is not letting us leave with our groceries like we normally do. They're saying something about a declined payment. Huh, that's weird. Oh well. I think I have some leftovers at home. It's no problem. The next day we wake up and we see that it's the first day of the month. Great. A whole new month to spend exactly how we want. At first, the day is going perfectly fine. But then we receive a phone call from the landlord. Apparently, our latest rent check bounced, and they're threatening to evict us if it doesn't get sorted out. At this point, it's becoming clear that this is not going the way we had envisioned. And if we fast forward the story much further, it gets worse rather quickly. We can save the hypothetical you from going there, because I think by now the point's been made pretty clearly. If most of us were to just simply quit our jobs on a whim, we would be... Why though? Why do we have so much to lose? We stand to lose everything because most people are entirely or almost entirely economically dependent on their jobs. According to the Federal Reserve, 37% of adults would not be able to cover an unexpected expense of just $400 with cash on hand. 52% said the maximum emergency expense they could handle by any means necessary was less than $2,000. Moreover, I mean, can you produce your own food? Can you produce your own clothing? Can you produce your own shelter? There's gonna be like that one Amish person in the comments that's like, yeah, bro, actually I can. Wait, maybe, should I just become Amish? But for realsies, for everyone who's not Amish, for the general population, we can't be self-producers anymore of any of these things. And no, your little garden on your patio, it doesn't count. And this is no accident. It's by design. And this time I'm not going to put the tinfoil hat on because it's actually by design. It's not like a conspiracy. It's literally by design that this is the way it works. Ever since we adopted agriculture, from that point forwards, which is only about 3 to 4% of the history of human work, our social hierarchy went from this to this. And our economic independence, meaning we were capable of producing the things we wanted and needed on our own, turned into economic dependence, meaning someone or something, an institution, controls and produces what everyone needs and compels you to labor for them to then obtain it. Right? Like, I think most reasonable people are cool with working itself. And we have to work whether we like it or not in some capacity, right? Like, we have to work in general because our biological needs demand that we have to get food and water and all these things somehow. I think we're just not cool with being forced by another human or some system or some institution to labor for them and be under the control of them while we conduct that labor. That's the key difference between these two things, economic dependence and economic independence, and this is the key change that occurred around the adoption of agriculture. The need to turn at least 95% of the population into forced workers was necessitated by the needs of agriculture and then later industry. And how this happened is pretty crazy and honestly pretty awful. We'll talk about that some other time. But yeah, man, like go play Manor Lords or some kind of similar RTS game. It's like, around farming season, what do you have most of your villagers and peasants doing? They're farming. So the key takeaway here is that the general population has been intentionally rendered economically dependent for the past 8,000 years, give or take, and that is the fundamental reason your real life starts at 5 p.m. instead of the moment you wake up. So yeah, no. A standard citizen today does not truly have the choice of whether to accept a job or take an employment contract when it really comes down to it. You may have a choice of what master you choose to serve, but you do not have the choice of whether to serve a master at all. We do not have a choice of whether to give up control of the underbelly of the iceberg. In effect, we give up control of our bodies and or our minds for the majority of our day in exchange for enough resources to attempt to live some semblance of a life with the minority of our day. Now, of course, somebody's gonna say, well then, if you don't like this arrangement, then start your own business. Be your own boss. Oh man, wow. Why didn't I ever think of that? You're a real smart fella, buddy. Or was that a fart smella? I mean, thanks for that one, Captain Obvious. Yeah. Yeah. It's obviously one of many solutions, and you're preaching to the choir here, man. Like that. Hello. That's what I do. But everyone is not going to and should not have to be an entrepreneur. Everyone should not have to do that in order to be free from this kind of control or just to have a human working experience like we talked about in the last video. Because living by the sword is not for everybody, because you can die by the sword, right? And a lot of people do. There's a reason most people in medieval times swore fealty to a lord instead of being a freelance. And fun fact, that word actually comes from medieval times, right? Freelance. It was the idea you could be like an independent soldier who did not swear fealty to a lord, and you could essentially be a sword or lance, spear for hire. The same reason most people swore fealty to a lord in medieval times is the same reason most people today swear fealty to a corporate lord, right? Very similar arrangements here. It's because there's an exchange of freedom for security going on. And obviously, if you don't mind your job, or if, hey, maybe you even like it, that's pretty cool. And if you're cool with exchanging freedom for security, none of that stuff bothers you, if anything I've said doesn't really bother you at all, then amazing. continue to crack on. But for everyone else, what I think is a much more universal and helpful approach to getting your freedom and your humanity back is to build financial independence for yourself in an accelerated and short burst, like I did several years ago. You don't need a high income for this. You don't need to be your own boss for this. I think my income range was somewhere around $34,000 on the low end and $70,000 on the high end, living in one of the highest cost, most expensive cities in the world. You just need to be willing to live in a very disciplined and controlled manner, however, something akin to what a lot of the kids these days are calling monk mode. Back in my day, there wasn't really a term for it. I just happened to create a protocol for myself that I followed that took a lot of principles from the FIRE movement, the Financial Independence Retire Early movement. I just kind of repurposed that, but added a whole bunch of other stuff to it that I thought was even more powerful, and ended up being this protocol that was a mix of financial, physical, mental, and spiritual practices that I basically owe my entire life to at this point. So I'm going to start talking about that as well soon as we continue to explore all these dimensions of how work truly works. Because of course, identifying problems is good, but also presenting solutions to them is even better. And with all that said, I think I'll probably leave it there. So thanks for chilling with me for a portion of your day today. Hope you learned a thing or two, and take care until next time.